Welcome, Dr. Beloo Mehra.
Namaste, bhaiya.
Well, we are very happy to have you on this series that Sakar has named as Auro Talks. Auro Talks is, first of all, is bringing out a book on Sri Aurobindo and the world thinkers. And I'm very grateful to you for having contributed a beautiful article on Madame Montessori and Sri Aurobindo's idea of education. Well, one of the ideas of having this Auro Talks and video talks is to share our views and your views with a larger audience. Because once the book comes out, I don't know how many can read it. But definitely this media, the sharing on the video will reach to a larger audience, both in the West and in India. So that's why we thought that this is as much important part of the Auro Talks as the book itself. Well, coming to your article, what you have written as Makings of a Truly Learner-centric Education, Sri Aurobindo and Maria Montessori. I think it's been a wonderful article. I mean, you have covered the most important philosophic concepts. And you have started with a very significant quote from Madame Montessori. Here is the point. One cannot see the method, one sees the child. There you have hit the nail on the head. One sees the child. I think that speaks volumes actually. In the sense that there is a whole shift in the vision of education. I mean, this is what we noted both in Sri Aurobindo, the mother, and Montessori and other educationists of the time. It becomes child-centered. And so your first quote has been a very significant one because you also explain. And apart from that, your last quote again, where you have said about that you have focused on the child, the teacher, the learning environment, the true individual within and life. In fact, that becomes the center of entire educational philosophy. So maybe before I go further, can I request you to give us throw some light on each of these? We'll take up one by one. But first of all, what exactly is a child for Madame Montessori and for Sri Aurobindo and the mother? I'm adding the word the mother also because her concepts are quite unique. They are based on Sri Aurobindo's philosophy of education, definitely. But what she had added, I think we'll discuss further. So can you tell me about the child in Montessori, Madame Montessori?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you so much for giving me an opportunity to contribute to this beautiful book that you're working on, and also to, engage in this kind of chit chat. I mean, that's a very loose word, but a conversation about these two educational approaches, if you will, and the great personalities who were the, names behind these two educational philosophies, integral education of Sri Aurobindo and the mother, and Maria Montessori's approach to education. So it was very gratifying to do the research on Montessori's work and looking at that in the light of what I know from Sri Aurobindo and the mother, the integral approach to education. I think going back to the question that or the first point that you brought up about the child. Yes, the seeing of the child is very important. And one of Maria Montessori's biographer speaks of Montessori as the new Columbus.
Yes, I remember.
And he uses this very interesting phrase because he says this discovery that she has done of the child is that inner discovery, unlike the Columbus that we know. So this idea that she constantly maintained, and her son also writes later on in a book that she maintains that she has discovered the child, or that she has seen the child. What is this seeing, this drishti, that is really important? And we also find it very interesting that her seeing was from an objective external standpoint, but she is somehow able to see beyond the external. So one of the things that I discovered, one of the anecdotes or in episodes in her life, which I think really turned her into who she became later on, was again had to do with the seeing, her ability to see beyond. So while she was still in her medical school, and as we know, she was the first trained medical doctor in Italy at a time when there were no women doctors, and her own father was not very happy with her choice, and the people, the officials, when she was applied, they were also not thrilled. They had actually challenged her that will never happen. So anyway, during the that part of her life, she was once on the road going somewhere, and she stopped by a beggar woman who also had a child with her. And instead of, Montessori speaks about this, that she did not pay attention at all to the mother, what she was asking for, money or food or whatever. And all her vision, all her seeing focused just instantly on the child, who was just sitting on the ground, playing, doing something with a waste scrap of colored paper. And Montessori was so intrigued by what she saw, the kind of concentration with which this child was able to find something meaningful in that piece of paper. And at that moment, she has this very strong feeling within that I have some other calling. I am supposed to be doing some work. It was a vague kind of an intuition. She says she didn't know what this vocation, even though while she was studying to be a medical doctor, that her vocation waits for her. And beautiful. Later on, that thing becomes very clear when she is looking after the children in the slum in San Lorenzo in Rome, where she then, that vague feeling, vague intuitive sense becomes very concrete when she knows this is what my work is. So the seeing that she does in the child also begins with the seeing within. So which also, I think, adds to how she was able to, it's not that people before her didn't know that child is not what we see on the outside. I mean, she speaks so wonderfully of the hidden nature in a child, the hidden potential in a child, the inmost reality of all living creatures. These are her phrases, which is, we find such interesting parallel with Sri Aurobindo. But for her to see that if we can catch on to that, then all the blossoming, all the education of the child becomes meaningful, becomes valuable, because for her, child is a man in becoming, where Sri Aurobindo uses the phrase soul in evolution, soul in becoming. So it's the becoming. But for that becoming to happen, one has to see or catch the innermost living.
So this simple creature. Outer incident is also true seeing within.
Yes.
I mean, she saw the child outside, but she was seeing
something within.
It's a wonderful experience in the sense, she had it both inner and out together.
Yes.
Lovely experience. That's what she, turned her life almost.
Right. So, I mean, I think I had that in an academic paper, you don't write too much of the personal details of the philosopher, but that experience must have had a huge impact on her saying this idea that one sees the child. So she saw the child, but she also saw the man in becoming within, the soul in becoming within her. And that awakening happened, I think.
Yeah, one thing, of course, you have used the word that soul in becoming. Of course, that's Sri Aurobindo. Do you think we can apply the word soul to Mother Montessori also? You have given the word inner nature.
Yes.
I mean,
yes.
is that very close to the soul or the Atman or the psychic that we use, or what is her definition of the inner nature?
So she speaks of that there is an innermost reality which is there in all living creatures. And as a Catholic, she also believed in this idea of, I mean, her own philosophy of what a human life is supposed to be about is that humans are here to carry on the work of creation of the Creator. So child is also, since child is a man and becoming, child is potentially a creator, not only of herself, but of the world around. So in that sense, that creative hidden nature,
element,
the creative hidden element, which I think has that parallel with the psychic spark in the sense that that is the true personality, true individuality that Sri Aurobindo speaks of.
So terminology may not be there, but the meaning is the same.
The idea is yes. And also I think in many of her writings we find the word psychic also, the psychic nature, the psychic development of the child, especially in her later writings. She speaks of the significance of the psychic development of the child. If I can just share one quote from her, I think these are some of her later lectures after she went back from India, which was in mid-40s after the Second World War is over. Then she went around at many places, also at UNESCO, giving lectures on education for peace. Education, because post-World War II, I think that was a very key thing. So at one place in one of her lectures, she says, directing our action toward mankind means first and foremost doing so with regard to the child. So whenever, if education is for creating a future humanity, future mankind, start with the child. The child, that forgotten citizen, must be appreciated in accordance with his true value. His rights as a human being who shapes all of mankind must become sacred. So she's very much about the spiritual, I mean, her approach to education had that spiritual component to it. And the secret laws of his normal psychic development must light the way for civilization. So the idea is very clear. It's the psychic development that will pave the way for whether it is peace in the world or a future humanity. So the secret laws of his psychic. So it's secret because it's not on the surface, but that very much is there, the psychic development. There are a few more things that where she talks about. She said in the same series of lectures, if I can be said to have a method of education, it is one based on the psychic development of the normal child.
How close when I get almost.
This is an exact.
I can see I can hear the words of Mother Shabda there.
So, I mean, it's very interesting how the world has taken over on Montessori method and materials. But she says, my approach to education is not a materialistic approach at all.
In fact, I wanted to ask you that ultimately, it's nice you read out that very important quote. Otherwise, one would go about by saying, oh, it's a Montessori method, and that she has prepared, as she calls, a prepared environment for the child. So most of the schools that I've seen in the country have gone toward these methods and materials. In fact, it's written Montessori materials, that kind of a thing has gone into. But it's nice to hear the last quote, where she also insists on the psychic development.
Yes.
That's wonderful.
Yes. So she actually, I think in response to your question, she probably was asked something like that. If I have it here, I'll share that with you. Yeah. So about that prepared, I know we are kind of jumping the, but this is where the holistic view thing comes in. So she speaks about that prepared learning environment in a later lecture. And she says, about the principal message that we have sought to preach is the need to prepare an environment.
Yes.
But then she explains, this is not a materialistic notion. It has a solid foundation in man's soul.
My God. Thank you for reading this lovely
yes,
quotation.
for it takes into account something hidden deep within it. This social environment for the child must serve to protect him not in his weakness, but in his inherent grandeur. That's the psychic, the divine element.
I think.
For he possesses enormous potential energies that promise to benefit all mankind. So child is put on a lot of responsibility in this approach, because it's the child who will be preparing the future humanity. These are some of her later thoughts, which I find it very interesting how she would elaborate on that after going back from India, where she was not only traveling, but for a long time she was based in Chennai.
My personal request is to revise your article.
Yes.
I think what you're speaking there must be put into the article, because otherwise the article is not giving this focus on the psychic being. Of course, you have brought in all that thing, but your quotes here,
I think
speaks volume. I think volumes, somewhere you please include these quotes.
Sure.
Because that's where she comes very close to the mother and Sri Aurobindo. And I'm happy to have heard that. Otherwise, my impression was, as I said, method and materials. Well, that's about the child and the psychic being. Now, coming next, not to the teacher, of course, as you have mentioned, but what's important, as just now we are discussing, is the environment. Well, it's not that she says, not a material environment that I want, that she's wanting something more. But exactly, does environment have any role in Sri Aurobindo and the mother? As much as, of course, you have clarified saying it's not necessarily the material environment. But do we use, or do we mean the sense Sri Aurobindo and the mother, do they emphasize on environmental importance? Yeah,
there are few things that I have come across, and maybe I can also ask you to share a little bit of your experience having studied at the ashram school. What I have observed in my readings of Mother and Sri Aurobindo's works on education, and other authors who have written inspired by Sri Aurobindo's and Mother's integral education, in the sense that there is some deliberate thought given to creating a learning environment, in the sense that how the furniture in the room is placed, the space itself, the aesthetic of the space, the accessibility, which Montessori also speaks about, having all the furniture and things at the level of children, even the space from where they need to carry out their materials, whether it is books or the learning blocks or other, creative material that we find in Montessori schools. Because there is, again, if you go back to what Montessori's early writings, based on her work, we find that this is also her evolution. Initially, in that slum classroom where this all thing started, there was a cupboard where all the materials were kept under lock. Only the person who was assigned the role of a teacher, who was not a trained teacher, and Montessori actually said that I'm happy that she was not a trained teacher, so I could guide her in the way. She was not coming with her preconceived ideas of how to work as a teacher. So it was her responsibility to take out the material, toys, the blocks, whatever the children were using, and at the end of the class, put it back. It just so happened that a day she wasn't there, and she forgot to lock the cupboard. So the kids, when she walked in, the kids were trying to take it out, but there was no chaos. It was still in a very disciplined sort of way. So Maria Montessori made that observation that this is a wrong thing we are doing. We need to allow kids to be able to take the things out on their own and then put it back. So self-discipline, many other observations came from that. But so I've seen that even at least in the ashram school and some of the other integral education inspired schools that I have been to, there is that attention paid to the space, the designing of the space. In the ashram school also, things are accessible to the kids. There is also emphasis given on movement, free movement of the children in the space. So they're not tied to a desk. There is room to move around. what is also very important I think, a little different in Mother's and Sri Aurobindo's approach to the environment of a learning space is that it's not just the school, at least in the ashram school, or maybe also in the schools in Auroville, the context in which the school exists, that also creates an environment, right? So it's not just the building, the environment within the building. So Mother also speaks about the children picking up from the environment, the ambience, and that takes us more to the internal environment. So Mother also at one point had said to a teacher that it's the internal environment that matters most, the consciousness with which a teacher comes in. So even if it would be a so-called ordinary public school classroom with desks and all, if a teacher is somehow able to bring in that consciousness, the environment may not be make much of a difference. Except, I think, in early childhood education, there is something to be said about, because children are like they're sponges. So they respond very differently to when an environment is it appeals to their growing idea of what beauty is. So for adults, maybe it may not matter because they have been used to that. But at the same time, I feel, having taught at universities, abroad and also here, I still think even for an adult or even in a higher education setting, when there is a deliberately prepared environment, rather than just desks being lined up and a power projector sitting at the back, and wires coming out here and there, there is a difference in how students respond to the teacher. So whether it is to do with cleanliness or aesthetic, I mean, it's a huge difference. I've seen this with Pondicherry University students, for example. When I have gone there, it's a different response. When we have, for whatever reason, brought students to a place like Sri Aurobindo Society, which is not an educational institution as such, but there is a deliberate attempt made to create an environment. I've seen them taking pictures and selfies and how beautiful it is, so that response comes. So I think there is some emphasis on the development of the aesthetic being, which comes from that prepared learning environment.
Well, I'll share with you something. Before I tell you my own experience, you see, in the environment that Mother Montessori is also emphasizing, I'll just tell you a few things which are very similar to what we have gone through. One, she says, is mixed age classrooms.
Yes.
Next, student choice of activity from within a prescribed range of options. Uninterrupted blocks of work time. Specialized educational materials are often made out of natural, aesthetic materials such as wood rather than plastic. A thoughtfully prepared environment where materials are organized by subject area is accessible to children and is appropriately sized. Freedom within limits. A trained teacher experienced in observing child's characteristics, tendencies, innate talents and abilities. Now you see, Beloo, these are in fact things. In fact, when I read your article and when I read a little more about Mother Montessori, these are not something new for me, at least. Because this is exactly the environment in which we grew up in the ashram school. I mean, I don't know who came first, I mean, the Mother Montessori or we. But all these things, this question of student choice of activity, mixed age classrooms, uninterrupted blocks of work time. You see, this was around the year mid-60s, 64, 65. I don't remember the exact year. But one thing I would like to make it clear, because of my experience I can share with you. the fundamental difference between Montessori and the mother and Sri Aurobindo is, one, in the mother's school, the ashram school, things have grown organically. Because I see the history of the ashram school right from 1943 onwards, and I came in 58, and then just after that, mid-60s, things started changing. But you will believe it or not, in the beginning, the school was exactly like any other ordinary school. In the sense, the discipline, the benches, what you're saying, the aesthetics, and it was a very common, normal school. But some things happened. In fact, she herself says, in fact, what you have said, the environment changed, the war children came down, and then mother had to start a school. And you have said it rightly that because of this situation, mother had to start a school. So there's no philosophy of education that she wanted to practice. Of course, there was Sri Aurobindo's philosophy of the 3 principles written in 1910 and all that. But I'm interested to see how the mother developed, because I feel one is the philosophy, principles of education from Sri Aurobindo. It's the mother who put it into kind of a practical reality. Had she not done that, Sri Aurobindo's philosophy would have remained a philosophy. And Mother Montessori would have been the best, the form and the method and the materials. So one thing I discovered is that it was an organic growth. The education system in the ashram school was an organic growth. Like we say, the whole of ashram has been an organic growth. She never planned anything, neither the Golconda nor the dispensary, nor anything. As was the necessity, she started. So in the beginning, the school was exactly like that, with quarterly examinations, class tests, and homeworks, and all that. Because I have gone through that period also. Initially, we should be given the homework and the class tests, and the quarterly tests, and we all know what's the meaning of a quarterly test. And especially it was given 40% importance in the annual results, 30% on the homeworks, or 20% on something. So we didn't feel the difference. Of course, the attention being given was much more because we were a smaller number of students in each classroom. But one fine morning, we suddenly see the whole thing reversed. We were given exactly this thing. We were told, now this is your classroom. The teachers were sitting in front of us. I mean, not all the teachers, but the selected teachers, one from French or mathematics or history. In the beginning, from 9 to 10 o'clock, there will be only these 3 teachers available to you. It's not all the 12 teachers were there. So we were there. We were told exactly the same thing, that your books on history and mathematics and French are available in these boxes. And box 1 is class 5th standard of French. Next box is 6th standard of mathematics. Next box is... So all the books that were there, the textbooks as we call, they were ripped open into texts, into chapters. And each chapter was put into a cellophane paper, plastic paper, and written there, chapter number so and so of this. So suddenly we saw this, what we see here, that is a student choice of activity from within a prescribed range of options. So I could go and choose. You choose in the classroom. You say, take to mathematics. I say, no, I want French. Somebody says, no, I want to do English. So, but we have to see who are the teachers available. I can't do what I want. I have to see who are the teachers available. So this the teacher's timetable was there, but not the student's timetable. So I took the chapter, and maybe I was doing mathematics, chapter 7. I did that. I showed to my maths teacher. He corrected it on the spot, and he said, it's fine, go ahead. I go to chapter 8, or I say, no, I had enough in the morning, I'll go to French. So there was a complete choice. that question of freedom was already there. All these changes that came about the timetable, about the choice of books, the freedom to choose whatever subject we wanted, that are being mentioned by Montessori, were introduced in our section in the 1960s, mid 60s. And so that, you see, even there I will tell you something important. As I was telling you, this whole system was organic. Mother system was organic. Organic in the sense it was a need of the hour, need from the pupil. So she did not impose any new idea saying, no, you should, from next year onwards you should do that. For example, a simple thing that I'll narrate to you, the question of no exams. It was not originally the mother's idea from tomorrow, no exams. Something happened, and as it happens in every school, some copying went on. In some quarterly exam, some child copied. And the incident went to the mother. Mother said, you see, she did not make a rule, no exam. She went psychologically deeper and she said to the teachers, find out why they are doing this. Then of course the teacher said, no mother, you have to tell us. She says the fear of education, that you want to pass the educations, you want to please your parents, you want to please your superiors. So she cut out the problem right from the root, saying that fear has to be taken out, not the external no examination. So she went behind and said, no, we'll take out this educational fear. And for that, one of the first things is, don't introduce exams. But then she said, very interesting, she said, but keep individual exams, individual tests. She didn't call the word exam. She said, keep individual tests. Because after all, we have to see if the student has grasped chapter number 7 before I go to chapter number 8, or one concept versus. So she said, but this is again a beautiful thing. She said, individually test the child. That makes all the sense. That satisfies the teacher who wants to give a next lesson. But there's no common fear that shall I be given A marks or B plus or C plus. That becomes a collective thing. There's a competition comes in, the fear comes in, the cheating comes in. So what was interesting was changes in the ashram school right from the middle school to the higher course. In fact, you won't believe, in the beginning, before 64, the higher course was the first thing. The higher course is the college level, our school's college level. There were very standardized three systems. One was the kind of, compulsory classes. One was a freedom choice. One was, when I was there, we had the 1-year project, 2-year project, 3-year. Everything was classified. So there's no question of, I could choose what the subject I want. The choice of the subject was there. But once chosen, I did not have the freedom. But she used to tell us, to choose, I'll give the freedom. But once you choose, you must have the discipline.
Right.
You see how she combines freedom and discipline. Right. So what we have seen here, the freedom alone is not important. Combined with discipline. So she was very strict. She said, in the beginning of the year, I'll give you the choice. But once you come in, 365 days, no change. Right. Otherwise, our vital, our mental can do all kinds of nonsense. Yes. So that's one thing I wanted to tell you about the environment and my personal experience of what Mother Montessori talks about the method. And the material, of course, there's not much of apart from telling that the classes, the texts were prepared, the classrooms were prepared. It was a very clean and beautiful environment, but not really aesthetically flower arrangement of photographs or pictures, nothing of the sort. Because we always believe in simplicity. Beauty is in simplicity. So our classes are never decked or decorated. It was a very simple. You must have seen the ashram tables, very square 3x4 benches and a very tough chair. You cannot be able to remove that. But those chairs last 60 years are still lasting. Your modern chairs might have broken down, but those are still there. Well, that is the environment I wanted to say, yeah. But what you have explained is also true, that it is the environment that really counted, and the word that you used was that consciousness is important. So now we come to the teacher. You see, both of them again, they emphasize on the teacher. And as you very beautifully quoted Nalnida, where he says, because mother says teacher has to be a yogi, and he says, no, yogi doesn't mean you should not tell a lie, you should fast 3 days a week.
Right.
Not that. It's a consciousness. So, Beloo, my feeling is this entire education thing, be it Montessori or be it Mother and Sri Aurobindo or the philosophy, ultimately we are boiling down to the question of the consciousness of the teacher. You see, so many times the teachers have complained to the mother saying that this boy is not good, that girl is not good. The fault lies with you, not with the child. You always pointed the fault to the teacher. Which means that we have to, even when the class is angry or making a noise, internally we have to be quiet and have the peace, invoke the peace. So ultimately, where do we land up? We have seen teacher, we have seen the student, the psychic being and all that. Of course, that will come to the last thing. But this environment, if that is what counts most. You see, we have concluded and we have agreed. The teacher is part of the environment. He adds to that environment by his consciousness. The student imbibes the environment. He said, can all the schools in the country and the world be Aurobindo ashram? So the education that I got or these children are getting at present is, because I also emphasize, perfection of the mind, perfection of the physical, perfection of the vital, all that is, it's become almost humdrum for me. Because I go to any school in the country now, leave alone the rest. You have gone to many schools. Everybody is doing mental, vital, physical, horse riding, swimming pool, everything, athletics and football and that. Externally, on the outward thing, the perfection of the instrumentation, most of the good schools, so-called, are doing that. So where are we? Where do we stand? We stand on this question of environment. Now you may add adjectives say spiritual environment, psychic environment, whatever you want to call it. But I boil down to the question of environment. I'll give you a small incident. I came across a Bengali family. He had 2 daughters. One he put in the ashram school, one he put in the Calcutta school. Put in a sense, circumstances were like that. But there's such a marked difference. Both are sisters. What a age difference. But the one who grew up in the ashram environment, they had a completely different nature. The other was brilliant. Both of them were brilliant, good artists, good dancers, all that was the same. But the swabhava of this lady, the character of this girl in ashram is completely different because she grew up. And one more thing I must add, because you are not there, I must tell you, the environment created by the mother's physical presence, I think we should not forget that. Yeah. Because you have also written, you see, we had a full access to the mother. A free access. In the beginning of the school days, every teacher and every student could go to the mother anytime. So Beloo, try to imagine what are the conditions here. We didn't have to preach, we didn't have to teach. Only anything is mother. Tell the mother, write to the mother. We as children had the full liberty to write to the mother, overpassing the registrar and the principal. These are all administrative heads for me. But the real supreme head was the mother. So once I got the letter from her, even the registrar and the principal, they said, sorry, I'm sorry, Anand, you have got it from the mother, you do what you want. So for us, this principal, headmistress, etc. was not important. The mother. So I'm just trying to make you realize that in our times, what it was, not only was the environment different, but she was the center of the environment. She was the breath of our life. So we want to do this, we don't want to do that, we want to go there, we don't want to go here. So now my entire question is, can we replicate this? Even now the ashram environment is different. The mother is not there physically, but still ashram is ashram. The children are so free, so brilliant, so much of having the choice of freedom. They come to the higher court, somebody does life divines and goes to the cooking class and does the Russian translate. Complete freedom. Now, I often used to wonder, what are the children going to do? Somebody is doing cooking and then reading life divine and go to a Russian class. But at the end of the higher court, they land up in China or in France or in London or in USA. Something. And may I add something, maybe I can add here on the camera. That there's hardly an ashram student who was academically brilliant or academically not so brilliant, but in life element, he has been always so-called successful. I mean, that's amazing, which I can compare with many of the outside students who do their MA, PhD and all that, and still they don't get a job or a job satisfaction. But our children have gotten somewhere. Repeat it again.
Yeah.
This is so difficult for me to compare this environment with any best of the Montessori, best of the Rudolf Steiner, because I cannot forget that there is somebody called the Mother's Grace is there. I mean, I know many of my own classmates who are so-called academically ... But in life, they're very successful, so-called success in the outer world, not spiritually. So I'm very much afraid of comparing. Philosophies you can compare, systems you can compare, as I said, methodologies you can compare, we are all same. But I'm insisting on the word environment, which I think in your articles also, I know you have written a beautiful book on education. What's the name? I forget.
ABCs of Indian National Education.
That is there, that beautiful book, but somewhere this replication of a spiritual environment, which is spiritual without being told about spirituality. Because up until I came to the higher course of the college level, I never heard the word of Savitri or the life divine or anything. We didn't have to. Because she was my life divine, she was my Savitri, she was my divinity, she was my Aditi. So somewhere I think, I feel sorry that sorry in the sense the circumstances don't allow us to replicate. But this is an element that we have to take into account when we write about Mother Sri Aurobindo and any other. So I'm sorry I went in a digression, but you asked me to share with you something. It's so deep in my heart that this question of environment, the mothers living in the body, and then our freedom. Others' methodology, we are very similar. What all you said about Mother Montessori and Sri Aurobindo, I gave you my own experience. We are 90% the same. Who came first, this or that is a question of comparison. So you have anything to add to it?
No. I asked you these questions because I think it's important that these things come out as part of this documentation work. Because even though we are trying to understand this in a comparative sort of way as an academic exercise, but it's important that this aspect remains out there as part of the documentation work. And I think there maybe the point is also, I don't know, this is just my personal understanding, the point is not to replicate, but the point is to just that this stays as the center from where that vibration will radiate. Because what you said so nicely, that others are trying all these so-called integral approach methods, vital, physical, mental, to some extent even psychic, things are coming up and here and there. But it's the effect of this consciousness that is being radiated from this center. So it's important to keep that center and keep strengthening it. Because the example you said about that Bengali family, the difference, I'm not sure. I mean, since I don't know the two individuals in question here, but what I have seen in terms of my interactions with whether it is my association with you, which has been now for 15, 16 years, and just being in your presence, we've had these conversations, and some of the youngsters who have passed in the last 10, 12 years or so. I think there are two things that are very marked, which somehow this environment, because mother's presence is there. Physically, yes, it was probably a very, the golden period. But even, then she said, now I'm everywhere. So the presence is there. The two things that I find, which probably could also explain why the outer life success is also there, regardless of whether they were academically brilliant or not. One is the certain fearlessness that just comes in to that true personality, that since I am the mother's child, since I am carrying that divinity within me, that spark, what do I have to fear? So this fearlessness gives them a certain courage to take up whatever life has to offer. And that vital sankalpa, that strength, that resolve, that will that gets developed to translate the whatever idea they might have had. I mean, I know of some people who've become very brilliant with uh, recycling old furniture, and the kind of aesthetic they bring into it, it's just marvelous. And an ashram ex-student, and it's, it may be not seen as an academic kind of a thing, but the kind of intelligence that goes into it, I don't have to become a scholar or a businessman or this. I am good at working with my hands, and I can be successful in that fearlessness to go to chart my own path. That I think is very remarkable, that somehow the students and anybody who is there in the ashram, and I am not a member of the ashram, but my association over the last 15, 20 years going to the ashram, or even I remember writing about this in my journal long time back, when I had not moved into Pondicherry, I was just coming, that there was a certain relaxation that comes inside in your being. And even after I moved there, and I'm not a very adventurous sort of person by nature, I wasn't, and yet I could just go everywhere freely without any sense of, not knowing Tamil, not being able to read directions, and yet there is some protective force that goes with you. Somehow, this only comes from this intangible environment that gets created. And if this element can be somehow replicated, um, and I think maybe the foundation of that is the love. If teachers can be, I don't know, you cannot train someone in love, but if teachers can be the means of radiating that love, and children, especially in early childhood, they forget that fear. It's not just the fear of exams, fear of life, of everything. We can, the blossoming will be very different. And having been a product of the normal so called education, I know it's not that easy to do it. But I think that's where what I also find very intriguing in my research and my reading of Montessori's work as a teacher trainer. She was very particular about doing the training in a certain way and not allowing other inputs to come in. So at one point, I've come across that after the end of one training lectures, she's told the teachers who had come there that you come from all over the world speaking different languages and this and that, and we'll go in different places. But she tells them that let's look at what we have been trying to do here. She calls herself that I am a pilgrim on the path, yeah, and so are you. So we are joining together in this on this pilgrimage so that we can see the child better and better. So again, her approach, her own approach to her work, whether as a teacher or as a teacher trainer, was very much there. It remains to be seen whether all those who go today to the Montessori training are able to catch on to that because if we see our work as a pilgrim and as a pilgrimage, it's a Tirth Yatra that we are on, and this will take us to the beyond. Whatever is the larger, the deeper purpose of life, it changes. It's not easy, but that's what at least her idea was. Her intent was very much there. She calls herself as a pilgrim, and asking her to join her on that pilgrimage.
Beloo, what you have said, to put it maybe in a better way, I'll put it in a more nutshell. This question of what you said, I'm the mother's child, etc. I would say use a single word, the trust. I think right from kindergarten to the higher course, last year, third year, what builds up, as you said very beautifully, is the trust in the mother, which thereby and therefore takes away the fear of life, because you know that she will take care. I don't have to be a professor, I don't have to be an engineer, a CEO, but मेरा life गुजर जाएगा comfortably enough. So they go and get married, or they have children, they have this and that. But inside there is this innate trust. What you said, Sri Aurobindo initially tells the student or the ashramite, saying that always think that you are the mother's child, and always believe that mother is with you. So this double focus is what comes as a kind of a innate belief in the child. So as I told you, he does the life divine, or he goes to the carpentry, and he goes to the drama class. For him, it is not a career that is building. It is something, because all these external things are only a kind of events or time pass sometimes, getting activities. But the inner growth, what we said, the inner being is what is growing. So these 13 years of this schooling is the period for the growth, the inner being's trust in the mother. So wherever they go, they know that mother will take care of her job. That's one thing. And that is what has helped the children to be what they are. And now the next question, or the last question I'd like to ask you is one thing. Okay, Beloo, I think I would like to draw your attention to the last quote from Sri Aurobindo, which kind of, as you said rightly, sums up the whole thing. When Sri Aurobindo says there are three things to be done.
Yeah.
To bring out the real man is the first business of education. The second is the personality of the teacher. And the third is to place a man in the right place in the world.
Right.
It's a very beautiful quotation you brought out. Yeah, we have discussed about the real man, of course, the psychic being, and the personality of the teacher. That's, we know a little bit. But one thing I feel is that to bring out the real man is the first business of education. I mean, you see, it's a great philosophy, it's a great truth, a great ideal. But how does it get translated into the school environment or a teacher teaching? I mean, how do we bring it out? The real, what Sri Aurobindo says, to bring out the real man is the first business of education. In the present system, it is sorely neglected. It can be done by promoting powers of observation, memory, and reasoning. See, he himself answers.
Yeah.
How to bring out the real man. So that I found is the most crucial sentence that you are given, Sri Aurobindo gives here. So the real man is not just meditation and reading scriptures and going to the... You see, there is a hint here that developing and perfecting the outer nature, outer instrumental nature, is the way, is the means to bring out the real man.
Right.
Isn't that incredible that there is the link between Mother's free progress system and Sri Aurobindo's philosophy?
Right.
Otherwise, to say real man, how do you bring out?
Yeah. Yeah.
But I was so happy to see promoting powers of observation, memory, reasoning, etc. The development of the faculty that he calls in this national value. So that was a beautiful thing. The last thing is what I thought is missing in the Mother Montessori. The third thing is to place a man in the right place in the world. Do you have anything to say about that?
Yeah, before I speak about that, I think the powers, the development of the outer instrumental nature, again, what I find very, in a way, liberating also when I think about what Sri Aurobindo has said, his focus is on faculties, not on the content, the subject matter. Even though in his essay, National Value of Art, he speaks about what subjects promote, what faculties help development of those faculties. But here it can be anything. So today, when we see institutions which are trying to build a model of education based on, say, gardening or agriculture or horticulture, and there are institutions trying to do that using gardening, I mean, the homeschooling whole thing, using living in a farm and teaching the children in their own family through this whole experience of farming. As long as these faculties can be developed, it's the bringing out of the man through the development of these faculties. That's one thing that I find in new forms, this truth that Sri Aurobindo speaks of is being experimented. There is Bhumi College, for example, in Bangalore, around Bangalore area, which is totally based on nature and environmental, ecological education, but developing certain faculties at higher education level. But the other examples are of people who have chosen unschooling or homeschooling kind of work and working through living on a farm and teaching their children through that. That is one thing. Now, the other part about the man in the right place in the world, I think in later writings of Maria Montessori, which are not that much reflected here in this article because the focus is on comparing the two philosophical foundations, where she becomes very articulate about the role of a child in making the future humanity. So in that sense, she's very consciously talking about those things. And this is also the aftermath of the World War II, where this was very important, that what is the future? So after the First World War, which they called Great War, the war was not supposed to happen. And yet it happened. All the experiments of League of Nations, everything is failed. So this was a big waking up moment for the world. And the progressive minds of the time were all concerned about how to prevent this in the future. So there, I think Maria Montessori, in her lectures on education for peace, she's being very vocal about what is child's role, because child, she says, will be the one who will make the future mankind. So there we find a lot of reference. But even in her earlier writings where she's talking about early childhood education, we find emphasis on that it's in the community that a child learns. It's in the society, the social surroundings in which the child learns. So she wasn't always talking about removing the child from the context. So that idea was very much there. But again, somehow I think over the course of time, what has happened is that her method has been removed from her philosophical understanding of what education is. In fact, there is at one place she speaks very much, and I think I've mentioned it here, about the environment. So she says it is only in the community that man's potentialities can be realized, which is the same is true, she says, for a child who is guided from within by special sensitivities at various stages of his or her development. So 3 to 6 years is very important. 0 to 3 years is, that multi-age grouping also she's talking about. But in the later stages of a child's development, a child goes through certain sensitive periods where with the right, working with the right teacher and the right environment, his or her adaptability to the larger community can be worked upon. So
Okay, I think we
that
can
I
accept
think,
that.
yeah, we can, because what's also very interesting is she herself, all her basis of coming up with this approach to education was done in a very naturalistic setting. She didn't create a setting, even though she was approaching it as a scientist. Yes, the initial classroom where, or in that slum, San Lorenzo in Rome, this was built up. But she was working. It's very interesting when we read the story. The people who were going to fund that project, they were not allowed to, put the money, allocate the money if she were to ask for school furniture. All she was told was that if she wanted some office supplies, they can help. Earlier, she would have also gone in for the regular school benches, but because she had to look for office furniture, which could be approved by the board, so she ended up asking carpenters to make separate tables and separate chairs, which was again a blessing in disguise for her. She speaks of that.
Yeah.
So even the cupboards, things like that. So nothing was made for children as a regular school, but out of that necessity, she chanced upon these things,
Yeah.
which is again very interesting how she discovers all these approaches. So,
Well, I think we had a good conversation. As you said rightly, an intimate chat. But I have a last question, which is, in fact, has been bothering me a little more. You see, I understand that we have Maria Montessori from 1870 to 1952. And you must have come across Rudolf Steiner from 1861 to 1921, 25, and Sri Aurobindo 1872 to 1950. They're all almost in the same, born in the same decade, 1870, 1861, 1872. And all these people have given a child-centric, a psychic-centric, and although separated by continents.
yeah.
How do you explain that? It cannot be copying each other. It cannot be, there's no question of copying, or even, I don't think he even read the books, or even they have not read his books, or not has Sri Aurobindo read their books, or the mother. And as I said, the mother also adapted, brought out organically these truths in her own way. Kind of, there was a need of the hour, need of the teachers. She kind of compelled the teachers to come up with some solutions. Now, my question has been, how is it that three great minds, Italy, and then the person, Rudolf Steiner, and the mother, and Sri Aurobindo? So, my answer has been that it cannot be, although, as you said rightly, even Maria Montessori, she sends her own books to Sri Aurobindo. It's not that Sri Aurobindo didn't know all these truths, but my question is always, how did they capture the same ideals or idea or philosophy? Well, because of the circumstances, the countries, the culture, things vary. Inner being or the psychic being is immaterial. But what I feel is, I'm taking this hint again from Sri Aurobindo. There's not anything to do that I have discovered. In the case of these three great philosophers, there was the Buddha, there was Confucius, and there was also this Aristotle there. Not Aristotle, what's his name? Socrates. He says these three philosophers, Socrates, West, Buddha in India, and Confucius there. And he says these three people were again the same way. The period was more or less the same, plus minus. He says at that time there was a descent of a mental consciousness all over the world. So those who could capture or receive, they received it in the same cultural background, in their own respective cultural background, but caught the same mental truth. So Socrates, Buddha and Confucius, they brought down a mental truth, or the truth, the way it expresses on the mental level. And they gave their own philosophy, they practiced their yoga and all that. Now similarly, because the other day I was talking to somebody, in the same period that Sri Aurobindo was there is the great philosopher Teilhard Chardin, and we have Sri Aurobindo, and we have other evolutionists, same period, plus minus. So what is it that they are able to bring out the same truth, one on the long back on the mental level? Now at this time, some other level has come in. So there must be some common consciousness that's descending. And that consciousness, of course, it descended into Sri Aurobindo's physical in 1950, fine. Later on 56, fine. Later on 72, fine. But that's the descent into an individual consciousness. But I'm sure it must have been pervading the earth consciousness and bringing out one essential and very crucial concept of the evolution. Teilhard said about the same thing, evolution through matter leads to omega point. Sri Aurobindo says the evolution through starting from matter ends up in supermind. And there's so many evolutionists who have thought about the new race. Even Teilhard also says another man will come about. So there is a tremendous, difficult to believe similarity in all the thinkers, just as we see the thinkers here. So I'm beginning to believe that there must be some universal consciousness pervading the earth consciousness. Otherwise, I cannot understand people who have never read each other but telling the same thing, almost the same sentences, the psychic being. The Chardin says the new man or the omega point or the noosphere. So this I feel must be recognized. The Sri Aurobindo, as I said again, Sri Aurobindo has emphasized that his work has been to prepare first the mental consciousness of humanity. That the mind receives the supermental consciousness first. Because it's only the mind who can become rampant, spread out, then it will sink into the vital, into the physical, etc.
Right.
So all the thinkers that we see as educationists, as philosophers, or psychologists, it is already there's a pervading of this new consciousness. You call it supramental or new consciousness, whatever. So that has, since the time I started reading yours, and you see I have other interviews with so many others also. All of these 15 authors, the 15 articles that I received, everyone comparing Sri Aurobindo with somebody else. And that someone else is not copying Sri Aurobindo. They don't even know Sri Aurobindo's name. But now I'm coming to conclude that there was the supramental consciousness pervading the human earth consciousness. So, and now I get the point, when the mother said in 50 years Sri Aurobindo's thought would be absorbed.
Yeah.
This is the absorption that is taking place, that has taken place. And now when we bring out the book, I'm going to bring out this point. This is a wonderful offering to the new consciousness. And it's very visible that how this new consciousness has already spread out, as Sri Aurobindo's thought has been absorbed by those who are receiving, those who can receive. So I said now this exercise of ours, we had a brilliant idea some time back, has a meaning. It's not just, to flatter some of you or to flatter some authors. But then I see there's a vision somebody else is guiding.
Yeah.
So we're all grateful to you, Beloo.
Oh,
and to all of you.
Thank you. No.
It's been a wonderful thing. And
privilege and honor is all mine. Can I just add to one couple of points here because this is so beautiful what you just described. You're talking at a higher philosophical level. And I think even at the level of educational philosophy, the commonality, the timelines that you speak of, I think, again, relying on Sri Aurobindo himself, what he has said, to my mind, it also feels like that from at the point, in terms of how humanity was beginning to look at education, there was probably a shift on the universal plane in terms of seeing the child and going from a more mechanical understanding of child as simply a dough to be kneaded in a certain way, but to be molded with gentleness, to allow what was unique in the child to come through. Because as Sri Aurobindo speaks about this is the beginning of from the individualistic to the subjective. So that consciousness probably was already at work to look at life in a more subjective way, rather than only an external way.
Right.
So that was probably also all pervading, which certain minds which were prepared, they caught on to that and expressed it in their own way. But even out just on an external level, the parallels are just, as the youngsters say, mind-blowing. You see, there is one instance in Maria Montessori's life and the parallel with Sri Aurobindo. So Sri Aurobindo in 1907 speaks about this, that he was always happy to be working, when he was working for India's freedom movement, from behind the scene. It was the British with their sedition charge brought him to the limelight. He had no intention to come in the limelight. Montessori, same time period, 1906 to 1908. She says, if ever I had any formal education in pedagogy, it was those 2 years when she was working with those children in the slum, that school, this classroom that she had helped establish. And then all of a sudden, overnight, she becomes famous. When her biographer writes about that, she had no intention of coming out in limelight like that. But it was her children, the way she was, they were able to capture that, So same time period, her name is known in the world. And same time period, Sri Aurobindo gets known in the Indian.
So it's just a coincidence.
Very interesting. Another thing, for the inaugural of that school in San Lorenzo in Rome, it happened on January 6th. Feast of Epiphany, 1906. Feast of Epiphany, and the children were not, somehow a little chaos happens. The children are not behaving the way the assistant teacher wanted them to behave. And Maria Montessori gets an inspiration to quote from the Bible describing the significance of Feast of Epiphany, which is the day of Jesus' baptism, the day the three wise men come and, I reveal to the world who is this child who is born. Feast of Epiphany, the mother has given it a significance. It is the festival of the offering of the divine material world to the divine.
Beautiful.
So the material world, the world in which child as a material also exists, which is now being offered for transformation to the divine's work. I mean, these things do not just happen as a coincidence.
There is something.
So some other force was guiding in different ways. So
that is really what you said is true, that the individual age has begun actually. I mean, towards this, instead of the spiritual, the subjective age begins.
Yeah,
there's so many things coming together.
Yes.
So brought us together too.
Yes.
Thank you, dear.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Bye-bye.